British workers and zero patriotism. The difference is our US deal secured the best deal for the car industry, providing certainty for the workforce at JLR. And there's more good news, Mr. Speaker, for the car industry this week, because Nissan is now building its new electric Leaf in Sunderland. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Sir Julian Smith.
Compliment the Prime Minister on the work he's done on Ukraine and wish him well over Christmas on that topic. Mr. Speaker, pubs are at the centre of rural communities in areas such as North Yorkshire. They are under more pressure than ever before. Could I urge the Prime Minister and the Government to look again at the rates issue and to look at how to relax the transitional relief?
Picture Keir Starmer walking into a room knowing he is about to face the political equivalent of being thrown to the lions, except the lions are cross-party MPs armed with awkward questions, damning statistics, and approximately zero sympathy. Today's Liaison Committee appearance was supposed to be routine parliamentary scrutiny, the kind of thing Prime Ministers do a couple of times a year and survive with minimal bruising. Instead, it turned into an absolute masterclass in how to watch a Prime Minister squirm, dodge, deflect, and occasionally just give up entirely on having coherent answers. From farmers contemplating suicide to strikes he cannot stop, from lychee claims to have dealt with but cannot name, to standards breaches he simply ignores, this was not political theatre. This was a public dismantling. Quick favour, if you are absolutely loving this Westminster carnage, hit that subscribe button and smash that notifications bell. Over 94% of viewers have not yet. It is free, takes a second, and keeps us bringing you these brutal political takedowns. Cheers if you did. Now back to Starmer's nightmare afternoon. Right, let us start with what the Liaison Committee actually is, because context matters. This is not just any old group of MPs having a casual chat with the Prime Minister over tea and biscuits. The Liaison Committee is made up of the chairs of all the other common committees. These are senior parliamentarians who know their brief inside out, who have spent months or years scrutinizing specific policy areas, and who absolutely know where the bodies are buried. When they ask you a question, they already know the answer. They are testing whether you will tell them the truth or try to spin your way out of it. It is political interrogation by experts, and Starmer walked into it looking remarkably unprepared. The session kicked off with Starmer addressing the appalling attack at Bondi Beach in Australia, showing appropriate gravity and concern for Jewish communities feeling increasingly insecure. He referenced previous incidents, including Heaton Park in October, and promised to use all available powers to keep Jewish communities safe in the United Kingdom. It was a somber, serious start, the kind of moment where Prime Minister sounds genuinely prime ministerial. And then the real questioning began, and everything went rapidly downhill from there. Let us talk about the family farms tax, shall we? Because this is where things got properly uncomfortable. Labour MP Cat Smith, someone from Starmer's own party, started grilling him about inheritance tax changes affecting farmers. She pointed out that farmers in her constituency feel misled by Labour. That is your own MP, from your own party, publicly telling you that your policy has destroyed trust. That is not opposition criticism you can dismiss as partisan nonsense. That is friendly fire, and it stings. But here's where it gets genuinely dark. Starmer admitted, on the record, that he is aware of farmers who are considering ending their own lives to avoid paying inheritance tax when it kicks in next April. Let that sink in for a moment. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has acknowledged that his government's policy is pushing people towards suicide. Farmers are looking at these tax changes and thinking death is preferable to financial ruin. That is not policy failure, that is policy catastrophe. That is a kind of admission that should trigger immediate policy reversal and serious soul-searching about what on earth you are doing. Starmer's response? He insisted that agricultural property relief needed reform, and that his changes are sensible. Sensible. People are considering killing themselves, but the policy is sensible. He claims his focus is on driving up profitability for farms, which is rather like setting someone's house on fire and then insisting you are actually improving their heating situation. Smith pressed him on whether he would perform a U-turn on the policy, and Starmer dodged the question entirely. He simply would not commit to reconsidering a policy that is literally driving people to contemplate suicide. That is either remarkable conviction or stunning callousness, and I honestly cannot decide which is worse. Conservative Party Chairman Kevin Hollinrake did not hold back in his assessment of Starmer's performance. He said the Prime Minister is once again putting party before country and that Starmer has acknowledged that farmers are taking their own lives following the introduction of his family farm tax, yet he still refuses to change course. Hollinrake called it a litany of failures from a weak Prime Minister and urged Starmer to grow a backbone, listen to the serious concerns being raised, including by his own MPs, and start governing in the national interest rather than protecting his own position. That is absolutely brutal, but it is hard to argue with the substance. When you know your policy is pushing people towards suicide and you will not change it, what exactly are you prioritizing? Then we moved on to the junior doctors' strikes, and Starmer's tone shifted to righteous indignation. The British Medical Association has announced strikes starting from the 17th, and Starmer is very gutted about it. He called the action irresponsible at any time, particularly at the moment. He pointed out that doctors received a very substantial pay increase last year and that there's a deal on the table that could have been accepted. His conclusion? I think it is irresponsible action by the BMA. Not for the first time. He added that the government will not cave into the union's pay demands and suggested the doctors have lost the sympathy of both the country and their colleagues. Now, there is something rather rich about a Labour Prime Minister taking such a hard line against striking workers. Labour is supposed to be the party of unions, the party that supports workers fighting for fair pay. Yet here is Starmer essentially telling junior doctors to accept what they are offered and stop complaining. It is classic new Labour triangulation, trying to sound tough and responsible to the general public whilst risking alienating traditional supporters. The problem is that junior doctors are genuinely overworked and underpaid. They are leaving the National Health Service in droves. The system is collapsing. Simply declaring their strikes irresponsible does not solve the underlying problem. But the real car crash moments came when MPs started pressing Starmer on government standards and breaches of the ministerial code. This is where you could actually watch him flounder in real time. Ministers are repeatedly breaching the rules by announcing major policies outside of the Commons. They are publishing crucial updates just before parliamentary recesses, so MPs cannot scrutinize them properly. These are not minor procedural issues. These are fundamental matters of parliamentary democracy and government accountability. Starmer was also asked why he lied about teacher numbers at last week's Prime Minister's questions. That is not opposition spin. That is a factual question about statements he made that turned out to be false. And the Prime Minister seems to have had no answers on any of these points. He just sort of flailed around, offering vague reassurances whilst failing to address the specific accusations. It is one thing to be caught breaking the rules. It is another thing entirely to be caught breaking the rules and then have absolutely no defense or explanation when challenged about it. Then came what might be the single most bizarre moment of the entire session. Alberto Costa asked the Prime Minister to confirm that special advisers should not be briefing about party political matters. Perfectly reasonable question. Costa then added, "Can you confirm that Labour Party leadership speculation is a purely party political matter?" And Starmer, instead of giving a straight answer, joked, "No, I am not sure I can. It seems to be pretty rife." It actually got a rare laugh from the usually dry committee. But think about what that answer means. The Prime Minister is essentially acknowledging that leadership speculation about his own position is so widespread that he cannot even pretend it is not happening. He is joking about plots to remove him. That is either remarkable confidence or whistling past a graveyard, and I suspect it is the latter. The session also touched on leaks from the government, and this is where things got properly strange. Starmer appeared to claim he has sacked someone over leaks, though nobody has ever heard this before, and he provided no relevant names. The claim came during questioning about numerous leaks from government, including budget details and briefings against cabinet ministers. If Starmer has genuinely sacked someone for leaking, why has nobody heard about it? Why can he not name them? If he has not sacked anyone and is just making it up to sound tough, that is even worse. Either way, it does not inspire confidence that he has any control over his own government's discipline. Then there was the absolutely excruciating moment when Starmer was asked to spell out when the long-delayed Women and Girls strategy will be published. He previously promised it would come out before the summer. It is now well past summer, and it still has not appeared. Yet ministers were out on the media just yesterday talking about what will be in the document. So they are briefing about a strategy they have not published, which they promised to publish months ago, and the Prime Minister cannot tell Parliament when it will actually arrive. It is government by vague promise and perpetual delay, and it makes the whole operation look utterly shambolic. What strikes you watching all this is how unprepared Starmer seemed. These are not surprise questions. The Liaison Committee sessions are scheduled well in advance. You know roughly what topics will come up. You have an entire civil service machine to prepare briefing notes, suggested answers, defensive lines to take. And yet Starmer repeatedly looked like someone who had not done his homework and was desperately trying to bluff his way through the exam. On the farms tax, on the strikes, on government standards, on basic factual questions about his own statements, he just did not have adequate answers. The accusation that he is putting party before country is particularly damning because it rings true. The farms tax is politically toxic, but reversing it would mean admitting mistake and looking weak. So instead, Starmer plows ahead despite knowing the human cost. His tough stance on the doctors' strikes is clearly about not appearing weak to the general public, even if it means ignoring legitimate grievances. His refusal to properly address standard breaches suggests he knows his ministers are behaving badly, but cannot afford the political cost of properly disciplining them. The farmers' issue alone should be causing sleepless nights at number 10. When you have got your own Labour MPs publicly saying their constituents feel misled, when you have acknowledged that people are considering suicide because of your policy, when major farming organisations are in open revolt, you have got a serious problem. The political damage Cat Smith mentioned is not theoretical. It is real, measurable, and growing. Rural constituencies that Labour needs to hold or win are watching this disaster unfold and drawing conclusions about whether Labour understands or cares about them. The junior doctors' strike is similarly fraught. Yes, strikes are disruptive. Yes, they inconvenience people and potentially harm patients. But junior doctors did not decide to strike on a whim. They are striking because they feel they have no other option.